Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Curious John, episode number 56, I believe. How y'all been doing? Huh? Doing good? Well, anyways, I don't want to make this longer than it is. This is a longer episode for me. As I've talked about a million times, wanting to do interviews. One of the things I was able to coordinate was with my boy Matthew, and we talk about our history, where we've known each other, where all that good stuff within the episode. But he agreed to kind of do a little podcast episode with me, and he's got a number of different podcasts himself, where he talks about a whole bunch of different fandoms that people really love. So this one, originally I was going to just spitball and go off book, which shows a little bit on the podcast, I'm not going to lie to you. But on this one, I decided to just kind of gravitate towards Star Wars, since I'm fairly high-level Star Wars nerd, I suppose. Not one of the greatest fandoms I follow, but I definitely do follow quite a few aspects of it. And so because of that, we've kept it Star Wars related. So for those of you that aren't big Star Wars fans, stick with me, or maybe this one just isn't for you. We just spitballed that this is essentially just two friends catching up, talking, getting to nerd out a little bit about one of these fandoms. So I hope you enjoy it. If you're interested in any of Matthew's stuff, he goes by Supergainsbros online, and I'll tag his stuff below. But he has a number of different podcasts that go anything from Star Wars, Game of Thrones, gaming, a few other things. I think a Lord of the Rings podcast, and there's another one that my mind is not wanting to pull up because I'm tired. So, hope you guys enjoy it. We'll talk soon. Wanted to talk to you for a little bit. You and I superficially know each other from online, right? Like, you and I met.
Right.
I should probably say this is Curious John podcast, and I try to do these interviews so often, dude, but it's so hard to do interviews. And I intentionally love trying to like do this in person. And maybe I just fly out to where you are now that I know where you live. You're not that far technically.
Right.
But I love the in-person thing better because I don't like the delay. But in trying to find people to talk to, it's a challenge in and of itself. And right now I'm in a position where like time is very limited. So if we get away with this, fine, we'll just do this for now. One of these days we'll have an in-person.
Oh yeah.
Which is I prefer better. I feel like it's a better connection. It's a better flow overall.
Yeah. No, definitely. Yeah, because I used to live in Ohio. Now I live in Portland. I think you're in Arizona, right? So
yeah.
Yeah.
You're closer now. You moved closer.
Much closer. Yeah.
So
is Arizona? Are you Pacific time zone or are you?
We're on the same time zone right now. We're in
Pacific. Okay.
Yeah. So
you're
right now, right now, I think we're in the same time zone.
Gotcha. Oh, because you guys don't do.
We don't. No,
you don't do daylight saving
man.
time.
Forget all that shit.
It's so dumb. It's so stupid.
Forget. I've never done it. It is ridiculous to me. The fact that you lose and you gain some time, like.
Okay, so it's like it's 2:56 for you.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. There we go. All right.
I don't have to worry about that, man. I don't like that borderline anxiety of like, oh, the time's gonna change. I better make sure I go to get to work on time correctly. Like, get out of here with the shenanigans.
It's stupid. It's so dumb.
So I want to talk. So do we want to get into like superficially how kind of we know each other?
I guess we can, man. Yeah,
I don't know if you ever talk about that these days.
I do now and then. I mean, it's still my handle, which is of course Supergainsbros. It was me and my buddy Ezra back in the day. We just started like a fitness channel, and it was kind of cool. We had like a small little community, there for like, it was probably like 2 years where everyone was doing fitness stuff. I met actually one of Colin Dewey. I don't know if you know.
So I met him a long time.
Yeah, so I met him. I met another guy. His name's Pete. Overweight to great. He was like I think the first in that little group to kind of blow up.
Yeah,
there was like everyone was kind of talking to each other, and I met him because he lived in Vegas, and so now that I live out here, my wife's brother lives in Vegas. And so I just went up and met with him. Yeah, but we had that little fitness community, and then I sort of turned that YouTube, like getting into YouTube and all that stuff, into like a bunch of other stuff. But yeah, no, we've always been on Instagram, and
Dude, you did great.
Yeah.
Like I followed you, and then eventually we all moved to Instagram, right? Because the YouTube
Right.
thing just takes so much time. It
Right.
just it's a time drain. And let's be real honest and frank here. Like the fitness community is a hard one to break into unless you're either doing really crazy things that are outside the norm range, or unless you're pharmaceutically helping yourself out.
Right.
And that's hard to compete with when you're not. And so it's hard, and I understand this too because I'm the same way. We're all human. So when you see somebody that isn't as impressive as what you want to be, you're not likely going to take advice from them, even though it's going to work out great for you because you're not pharmaceutically charged,
Right.
right?
Right.
So at some point, I kind of moved into more of a vlogging state with the YouTube thing, and then eventually kind of went into all this stuff that's more edifying, if you will. But it's just fascinating. Like I made good friendships with you. We kind of talk, and then we found ourselves on Instagram again. I stopped doing the YouTube thing because it was a huge
It's a
drain.
lot.
But I don't know if you remember Boski Train, Ralph. We're still kind of very
Maybe.
close. He was like fitness, but then like he's doing a lot of baseball related things. So him and I are actually very close. I see him on a regular basis.
Oh,
Like
cool.
he's out in California. He came out for spring training just recently. So him and I talk all the time. So it's very interesting, and I miss those days where it felt like the early age of the YouTube fitness community, right? It was like
Mm-hmm.
just us grabbing a camera and just filming.
Yeah. No, it was no, it yeah, it was awesome. And it was just like I just saw it sort of happened at this like same little point. And none of us were like big. And that was I think like
Right,
the cool part
right.
about it was we were all like just this small little group of, like people following each other and like subscribers. And then yeah, but like you said, yeah, YouTube so especially YouTube fitness is
Right.
really hard because now I do YouTube like semi-professionally.
Right, right,
Um
right.
and I can tell you that the fitness community is hands down one of the single hardest things to do on YouTube. Even TikTok now. Like even TikTok is big and it's way easier to get viral.
Mm.
But unless you're like, you know, 18-year-old female, just doing squats, like it's really hard
Yeah,
to do
yeah.
to do the fitness stuff. Because even like my buddy Colin, D-Way, like he was doing it same little, we were all like on each other's videos and everything. He's been doing it hardcore and he posts like a video a week and he does good content. He's still only at like 12,000 subs. He's been doing it for like 7-8 years.
It's hard, man. As you talk about like the fitness influencers, the females that are like just doing
Yeah.
butt stuff. Like I often want to do like
Right.
a funny gag video where it's like the male equivalent of that. But it's
Yeah.
just one of those things where I just don't have the time. I have all these ideas, just don't have the time for them
Yeah.
these days. But yeah, no, you're right. I mean, it's hard to break into it, and the fitness thing is so difficult. It's so difficult because it's also, by the way, it is, and I've been part of a few different communities online,
Mm-hmm.
right? The fitness one is quite frankly the biggest and trashiest of them all. It's the
Yeah.
worst. They're borderline competitive to a point where they don't want to help each other out. They're just in it for themselves. It's very egotistical, and in some respects, the endeavor that they've chosen is one of a bit more selfishness, right? But I'm do a lot more creative stuff. So if you follow my Instagram, which I know you do,
Mm-hmm.
you see a lot of the woodworking stuff, and that's a different community, right? Like the creator, the maker community, completely different, and it's kind of like the opposite mindset. They're more willing to say, hey, this is how I would do this. This is how you should do this, or help you, give you tips, teach. Versus the fitness, it's more about me. It's a very different mindset.
Yeah. And I will say too, like the little community group we had too, also wasn't like we weren't out. It was kind of like more of like a vlog style. I felt like everyone
Yes.
was kind of doing like a vlog, just like, and I think that was what made it more interesting. Was it wasn't like here I'm some like massive dude on steroids and like these are the 5 exercises you should do if you want to
Right.
get bigger. Things is everyone was kind of doing sort of like vlog style stuff. And it was really more of like a motivational like
Mm-hmm.
thing. And so I think that's what made it like that was what made it really fun and why I've still like, I still follow like the exact same people like I have followed, and I've like messaged people, on Instagram and like things. And it's like totally just because we were all like in this little YouTube community there for a little bit. It was cool.
It feels, or at least at that point in my life, it felt like for me, like it was like what's the word I'm looking for? it was like the underground scene. It wasn't super popular now, right? If you go to a mainstream gym now, I'm sure you see cameras everywhere. And I remember when I brought camera, I mean, in fact, I have video vlogs where I'm talking about gym members or gym owners and people who run the gyms being extremely angry about the cameras I'm bringing in. I've gotten one of the videos I published on my channel, which was like me aggressively calling out gym trainers, was like, I don't know if I ever talked about it or re-referenced it, but that video, like I was talking about watching this trainer teaching this older woman an Olympic lift. I'm like, what is wrong with you? You don't do that. And so I made a video about it, basically ranting. And I heard, because I had friends who were employees of that gym, that video made the rounds in that gym. Like they had a meeting about it. But now these days, it's like that probably happens all the time, or people just don't care anymore. But it's fascinating. It's a different time, and it felt like the early ages when we were doing it, and it was more friendly. It felt like it was a little bit more underground than it is now. Now everybody's trying to become an influencer. Everybody's trying to become a person that people want to follow. It's fascinating. But anyways, I thought we give some people some background that was just not like two complete strangers just talking. You and I know each other for a while, which is trippy, but that's the beauty in it.
Right? I was looking for it. I know it's probably up there just behind something. But you sent me a wristband. I still have it. Like Motivator Results wristband, dude. Man. I've got it. I think it's 1 second.
All right. Wow.
Right here, man. Boom.
Oh yeah, dude.
Yeah, right.
I still have some of those. I should have put some in the box.
Right there, man. Oh yeah, I still got it, and I think it's got a it's a white on the other side.
Yeah. Wow. One of the reasons I made one of those is because I bought a Rogue bar, and it had like a chamfer in it or something where you can actually put those bands. So it was just an excuse for me to buy a bag of those things and just throw them on my bar.
Yeah,
pretty hilarious. But I mean, I miss those days a little bit because it felt more innocent. Now it's just it feels like everything else. It's profitized. It's people trying to make money. But back then, it just felt like, hey, I wonder how my buddy's lifts are doing. Let me go check on what he's doing. What is he eating? What is that weird yogurt thing he made? Right? Like it was some of that. It was just a little back and forth talking smack. Like, I could do that. Who was the one that originally did all the challenges? Somebody started doing challenges, and I was like, oh, this is getting interesting.
Oh, I don't know. Oh, there was a couple people. There was one guy, I don't know if you remember, I can't remember his name, but he was this British guy, and he was like a world's strongest man competitor, but he was like 16. And and so he was like doing like these like crazy powerlifting stuff. I remember he did a bunch. There was another guy too who did a bunch of challenges. I can't remember his name, but yeah, I know. I remember a lot of them came up because that was it was right around the time of the it was the same like summer-ish of that like ALS ice bucket challenge.
Oh, that's
remember when everyone was doing that, and I remember doing like a push-up one and being like, all right, and naming a few people. And
I remember when that bucket challenge was coming out, I had a place that had a pool. And there was like numbers going through my head. I'm like, how much would it cost for me to fill this with ice?
Nice. But that's real expensive.
Yeah, that's why that went out the window. I was like, no.
Yeah.
But anyways, now that you're famous and such, I want to talk to you about nerd stuff, man, because I love this stuff. Apart from, look, a lot of this podcast is likely going to be us just nerding out on the topics. But because you are now like an authority in these things, I want to get your opinion on some things, and we're going to get into some things that I'm curious what your feelings are on these, especially some of the new movies, which I've been very vocal about. Just saying they're trash. I'm talking about Star Wars, by the way, people. I'll be honest with you. I don't even think I've seen the last one of the trilogy
of the Rise of Skywalker.
I don't think I've seen the last one. I don't think
I have so many mixed feelings about them,
and so. So we'll get into that, but we'll start with some easy questions. What are your favorite of the trilogies?
Oh, favorite trilogies or just favorite movies? See, I'm kind of, I guess now obviously the original trilogy.
The caveats.
The original trilogy is the best, but my favorite movie and just for a lot of sentimental reasons, is actually episode 1, The Phantom Menace, which I know for a lot of people don't like, and that's fine. I think that's sort of the good thing about Star Wars, is that honestly, there's a movie for everyone. And it's basically just gonna love Qui-Gon Jinn, Liam Neeson, and it was just like it just came out right when I was I don't remember exactly how old I was. I guess it would have been 10 or 11 because it came out in 1989. So 9 or 10. And it's like I watched those original trilogies on VHS like over and over and over again. And so it was kind of like, hey, here's the new movie coming out. And I remember specifically all the merchandise and everything that was leading into it. And there was all this, like, specifically, it was like Pepsi cans. There's Pepsi and Mountain Dew had this like huge campaign around Star Wars. And so on the Pepsi cans and Mountain Dew cans, they listed all of these characters, and they had pictures of them, and they had like brief descriptions. It was like an enormous campaign. Like if you look up the Anakin like Pepsi like vending machine, like those things still sell for like hundreds of I mean, not hundreds, but like thousands of dollars because Star Wars collectors want them. And they were just like pretty iconic. Yeah. So I just remember especially like Obi-Wan, and it was like, well, I know Obi-Wan from the movies. Now we're going to see like a young Obi-Wan, and we're going to see a young Anakin who turns into Darth Vader. And then like Qui-Gon Jinn's there, and then Darth Maul comes out with the double lightsaber. And I was like, dude, this movie is awesome. Like it was so it's still my absolute go-to movie. And I think another reason I really like it compared to just even the rest of like the main saga is it feels to me the most unique. Like, because they were still in that stage where they're doing a lot of practical effects in that movie, and it wasn't as heavy CGI as episode 2 and episode 3 are. In episode 2, Anakin's older, and so there's not that big of a time difference between 2 and 3, so those feel like you really can watch those together, whereas episode 1 feels like it's just its own movie hanging out there by itself, so it feels kind of unique. And then everyone's like, oh, we don't like it because we don't like Jar Jar. And so I feel like I got to defend it. So episode 1 for me. So I honestly go back and watch the prequels a lot, because then episode 2 for me is just okay. But episode 3 is like king.
Wow. Yeah, no, I think that is the very first one I myself also watched in theaters. I remember my parents taking me to go see it and waiting in line. And we're like, we're going to wait a while. And thinking like, why is it such a big deal? Right. But even for them as adults who aren't real big nerds, I would call them, like they remember when the originals came out that it was a big deal. So they wanted to make sure to go to it. It was interesting. It was good. I mean, I liked it. I'm not, a lot of people hate on that trilogy for a number of different reasons, Jar Jar being the one of them. And so I think they were fine. They do have a different feel than the originals. But the originals were more dystopian. It was a different time already, right? I eventually in this podcast want to get to the whole Darth Jar Jar theory.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've heard of it. I love it. I love it. I think it just would make sense, but we can get to it. Anyways, I mean, so what about of the original 3?
Return of the Jedi is my favorite.
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that one. I agree with you.
I mean, they're all good, but in that one, I think it's just because Luke's got the green lightsaber.
Yeah.
And sometimes I've always thought about necessarily like what's the best movie, and I don't think I can put Return, for me, for a long time I couldn't put it like above Empire Strikes Back, but just because I think the opening to Return of the Jedi is kind of slow. I think it's kind of it feels like the openings of that movie is a little slow. Like Luke's, you got to go through Jabba's palace. It gets a little weird with like the dancers and stuff like that. It's just like, okay, George Lucas is really just like letting it kind of, go out there. And then you go back to Dagobah, and then you go to Endor, where it doesn't really start to pick up until Luke and Vader go see Palpatine. And then the back half of that movie is like pure just Star Wars gold. But I think the first half of it's a little slow. But Luke's got the green lightsaber. And then the final battle with Emperor Palpatine and Darth Vader's there. And it's just, and then Lando and Han are out there flying. It's so good.
All right. So Regrettably, I'll ask you this one too. Of the newest trilogies, which is your favorite? Look at your face. I can
God.
already tell.
Yeah, the new trilogy is honestly really difficult for me to even begin to rank, because if you watch it as a fan and you don't know any of the like behind the scenes stuff, then episode 7 is the best movie. And I run a bunch of polls and just what I see and comments, like when I post Star Wars videos on TikTok or even YouTube, which I do have kind of like a slightly different audience demographic in both. So like my TikTok audience is like much younger. I mean, these honestly, like the majority of my videos, I post Star Wars videos on my TikTok. It's like 8 and 9-year-olds watching.
Whoa.
I'm sure. Yeah, because a lot of them are like, a lot of their profile pictures are like Lego Star Wars characters. It's all of them. I mean, like all of them. And so, but they all seem like they all seem like sort of episode 7 seems to be the best. The problem with the sequels is that Disney did not have a plan for them. I mean, it's so obvious, and if you read any interviews with it, that basically it's like JJ Abrams comes in and does the 7th movie, and it's a good, like, where it leaves it, it can go in any direction. Then they let Rian Johnson come in and do episode 8, and he takes it in like kind of this direction. And then he leaves it in a spot where there's not a lot of places to go. And you've like killed off the guy who kind of is the main villain. And so it's like, there's really like the story can only go in like one direction, but a lot of fans didn't like the direction they went in. And so now they try to like shoehorn a bunch of stuff in the final movie to try and like course correct. And they even like, they bring back Emperor Palpatine, and like they even say like, JJ Abrams like, well, we decided to bring him back. And so what ends up happening is, well, you bring back Emperor Palpatine and you tie in this huge story about like Rey's parentage, which was kind of like the thread throughout the whole trilogy that everyone's excited in. And so it's like, okay, so you obviously didn't even have an answer to this until the final movie. So you were just kind of like, we'll figure it out, instead of laying great breadcrumbs to some big reveal at the end. And it just comes across as so like obvious that they were just like, threw this thing together on a shoestring. So it's tough because like The Last Jedi, to me, I think is probably a better movie than Rise of Skywalker, but it's like The Last Jedi derails the whole thing. So it's like, do you view The Rise of Skywalker with like a handicap and be like, well, it tried to fix this? It's not good. And the crazy thing about it is the other 2 Disney movies are way better than than like the whole thing.
That's my issue with the new movies, right? I think when you talk about Lucas, he's very good at storytelling. And so where the originals might not be visually as stunning as the latest movies, they're far better storytelling elements in it. And that's where the newest ones are weakest. The storytelling is not good. And it's amazing to me that you would take a property this old and not put more time and energy and maybe love into it, instead of looking at it as a machine to make money.
Yeah.
You know, when you're talking about the original Star Wars, you're talking about the hero's journey, you're talking about the journey of Luke, you're talking about the family tree. I mean, you're essentially, and with the level of fandom that this community has, like, to not plan this accordingly and not to make a mind-blowing story with the CGI, they missed out. They missed the mark. Period.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that really baffles me too is this, like, think about this. Like, they acquire this huge franchise, and at one hand I'm sitting there and I'm going, okay, so I look at it also as like from the Disney as a whole, right? It's like, how are you to tell me that the people who, you know, like in theory, right, share a hallway with one another, right? Like the big brands of Disney, like you got Pixar, you got, you know, all these, you got Marvel and Star Wars. Marvel is able to tell an ultra compelling story over 25 movies, from like Iron Man to Avengers Endgame is like 25 movies. You tell this ultra amazing, well-crafted story. Yeah, you got some bumps in the road here and there, but at the end of the day, it's like when you watch Avengers Endgame, you're like, it was worth it. I just watched all these movies, and Star Wars can't figure out 3. Like, what are we doing?
It's the same company.
Exactly. That's like the crazy part.
Yeah. I don't get it. I don't get it, because my frustration too with Hollywood is the idea that you're purchasing a property that already has history, right? So for Marvel, the story is there, just translate it, and then you get into the weird thing of like the Marvel or Disney or whoever deciding that they don't want to put this out the way it was originally written. Then you have the actors saying, I don't think the character's motivations are here. Like, no. You're the actor. Act the thing out. That's all you do, right? Like there's a number of actors now that are coming out saying like, oh, I don't want to do sex scenes anymore, right? But my point on that, because I think Henry Cavill did it for The Witcher, and the guy from You just recently came out saying he doesn't want to do any more sex scenes. And I have a very rigid stance on this, where, especially for something like The Witcher, because I'm very biased. I'm in love with that series. Like I read those books and I love that series. And for somebody to come out and say, I'm not going to do the sex scenes, well, my attitude on that is like, bro, you took the job. You knew what the job was. And then now you had a change of heart. It's like, no. Step away and let somebody who wants to do the work. Because the problem is, and this is my stance on all of these things that already have existing media that defines them. You are you're wanting the folks that love the thing to go expend the money to watch the thing or buy the things, right? But because you're leveraging that love, they also want to see a accurate version of what they think happened in that story. So you meddling in it for your artistic wants ruins it. It pisses on the idea of the actual art piece.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of what I also feel like, to bring it back to Star Wars, happened with like the written work that's not being just translated.
Yeah.
Which the fandom, in my opinion, the limited opinion, the small view of the sample that I have of your community, is like people seem like they really liked the Old Republic, not the Old Republic. What are the books actually considered?
Extended universe stuff.
Yes, they love that stuff, and they were mad when that stuff wasn't being translated. And now we have this Rey situation where I think the books, it's like Luke's kids and everybody's kids moving on, right? It's crazy to me that they would put out such a subpar product when they already had like the cheat code for the thing.
Well, it's even more crazy too, is again, it's the thing with Star Wars is like in Marvel, like Kevin Feige. Jon Favreau is obviously a big part of it, but Kevin Feige basically has end all say. In Star Wars, Kathleen Kennedy has end all say, but it seems like there's a lot of butting heads on the Star Wars side, because now you have Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni, who, Dave Filoni did the Clone Wars cartoon. He did Rebels. Now he's the guy doing the Mandalorian, because the first episode of Mandalorian dropped like the same day Rise of Skywalker came out, or like it was the same week or something.
Okay.
And so literally it's like Rise of Skywalker comes out. This is pretty not great. And this is a big budget mega movie.
Oh yeah.
And here's the streaming show that's infinitely better on a far less budget. You know what I mean? And it's like, how does that happen? Like,
so I didn't know those dates. So did the movie drop and do bad, and they said release the show immediately?
No, because it came out. So Mandalorian came out. It was launched with Disney Plus.
Okay.
Yeah, it was launched. It was like the show to watch when Disney Plus launched, but it launched like the same time as Rise of Skywalker. It was certainly the same month. I think it launched. I think I can pull it up. I'll take a look here. But regardless, it was like boom. I mean, right then and there was the same thing. Or maybe Mando might have started a little bit earlier, but it was certainly like the Mando finale was coming towards Rise of Skywalker, and it's like, here's the Disney Plus TV show that's just killing it, and it's like the most talked about show. I mean, it still is like, it's like a top 3 streaming show.
People love it.
Oh, it's huge. Yeah, it's
I'm
absolutely
enormous.
enormous.
I haven't seen it yet. I'm a little
Oh
ashamed
my
to say
God.
that.
Once you watch it, you'll be in. It's so good.
So yeah, because everybody tells me that. Everybody's like, you need to watch it. I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, I'll get to it. I'll get to it. I'm limited on time these days. But so Pedro Pascal isn't the guy actually like acting in the suit when the filming's being done? It's another person.
He doesn't do all of it, but he does a little bit of it. Yeah. But no, a lot, because he does a lot of it's voiceover, but then there's scenes where he has like his helmet off, and so then he's actually acting.
So there's like very few scenes that he's actually acting except for the voiceover work. Because that guy's got,
yeah, I'd say so. But a lot of it's like yeah.
Go ahead.
He does stunts. He does stunts and stuff. There's stunts and stuff that he wouldn't be doing too. Yeah, but
it's just fascinating to me because he's actually had another resurgence of like fandom.
Oh, he's huge now.
Following him right now.
He's huge right now. Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. And so for him to like not actually be filming 90% of the show that people love him on, except for the the voiceovers, it's crazy.
I know. Great gig.
I mean, that's a pretty sweet gig.
Yeah.
That's a pretty sweet gig.
Great gig. Yeah.
So I know we're jumping around, but I mean, it's like I said, it's just a lot of ball busting stuff. So a lot of just fun nerding out stuff. So I don't want to, but I'm gonna, because I enjoy shitting on the last 3 movies. So what were your thoughts going into the latest trilogy? What are the emotions that went through when you started watching it and you're like, oh, this Ray person, and there's this, who's her parents?
Yeah, so it was kind of interesting. So going into The Force Awakens, I was just ultra excited. So it was like, man, this is Star Wars, whatever. When I left Force Awakens, I was still super hyped. Still very hyped. Then we actually got Rogue One.
Oh, that's right.
So Rogue One came the following year, but still it was like all the theorizing and everything was about like Last Jedi, the next movie. So Rogue One, totally interesting. I was like, whatever. Like, it's gonna be cool. I'll watch it, whatever. And then Rogue One comes out and it's like top 3 Star Wars movie. Like, Rogue One is just like Rogue One is just like amazing, which is actually the same way I felt about Andor before it came out. And then absolutely love Andor. Andor is so good. Like, I was not expecting to like it, and then I ended up like loving it.
Okay.
And so then The Last Jedi came out, and I walked out of that movie and I was like, yeah, I don't know about that. I don't know about that. And then I walked out of Rises, and then we got Solo. So then Solo came out after Last Jedi, and I walked out of Solo and I was like, I love this movie. And the internet's like, Solo wasn't that great. I think there's a lot of reasons that Solo wasn't received as well. None of it actually has to do with the movie itself. I think it was really bad timing. It came out like 5 months after Last Jedi, so there's already a sour taste in fans' mouth. And then it also came out a month before Avengers Infinity War, which again, whoever I don't know who's running, whoever decided to release that at Disney made an absolutely colossal mistake. And then they wonder why the movie didn't do great at the box office. And it's like, you released it behind like the second biggest movie like ever.
Yeah.
Like it's terrible idea. So I liked Solo, and then Rise of Skywalker came out and I watched it and I was just kind of like, nah. It wasn't this big, huge ultra finale. It was just kind of like, we had the Mandalorian to look to. So I was like, I don't know, man. I guess the Mandalorian's going to be it.
That to me is ridiculous though, because I think
I know it is ridiculous. Yeah.
it is like 30, 40, how many years now worth of this franchise where you just literally did the least possible. You did the least. And I'll be honest, I haven't seen it just because everybody's attitude is very similar to yours. It's like, whatever. And so it's crazy.
As standalone movies, like if you watch them, just like you just pick it up and watch it, and you're not like thinking about the context of the others movies, like they're all individually kind of okay. The Force Awakens actually isn't a bad movie. The Force Awakens is actually like kind of good. I mean, it's not great. It's not bad. It's just sort of okay. It's just sort of like it's the beginning of this trilogy that's not like particularly. I mean, like to me, it's like I consider it like it's right there with Attack of the Clones, which to me is like one of the not as good. I have it towards like my bottom list of favorite Star Wars movies.
Okay.
but it's just like, it's sort of okay. Harrison Ford's really funny in it. Like, he has a lot of really good moments, and there's some cool stuff in there. But it's just sort of just like, okay. And then, but it goes off the rails after that. And so then it's anchored to these other two movies to where you're like, you know. But the crazy part about it is that, like, you know, like Kathleen Kennedy, who's honestly like one of the greatest executive producers in basically she's attached to almost anything that George Lucas or Steven Spielberg has done.
Okay.
I mean, like everything, like E.T., Indiana Jones. I mean, like mega movies. She's been like an executive producer on. I just don't know that it's hard to say, because like the Star Wars fandom like hates her, like absolutely loathes her.
I know.
But I kind of defend her a little bit, because I'm like, the hard part is, if you look at everything else she's done, like besides those 3 movies and kind of Kenobi, I didn't really like Kenobi. Like, it had cool moments, but overall I thought it was kind of a mess. She's basically knocked it all out of the park. Like Star Wars Rebels, amazing. Like the video games that have come out, like really good. Totally like revitalized Star Wars video games. The Mandalorian, like she's still the head honcho who gets to sign off on that, and like everything else. The problem is that like you whiffed on like the 3 like most important pieces. Right. So no matter how much other stuff you do, it's kind of hard like to fix it.
It's rough, because I feel like at her level, she's likely not making a lot of day-to-day decisions.
Exactly.
And so it might not rest on her shoulders. She's kind of like a board member where they just do a final sign-off. She's stamping it, right? The problem is, though, that Star Wars trilogies are more than just a movie. This isn't like John Wick. I love John Wick. It's a fun time. But they mean more because they span so long between videos. They are a 40-plus year universe that's being built. You need to have incredible storytelling. You need that. That's like number 1 recipe. That's it. They had that in most of the movies. I mean, the first ones were great, and let's be honest, there's a little bit of a bias because back then movies weren't as good, right? Everything progresses and gets better over time, as we talked about from our fitness days, right? In the beginning, you and I were just filming our serials, right? But now people do productions. They do, you know, there's people doing amazing things. Everything progresses, right? So that's why a lot of people knock on the second set, and people love the second set over the first set of trilogies. But because it's a better product, they look better. The storytelling's still good, but they look so much better. But the first ones were a beautiful piece of art because of the storytelling. And all of the movies, in a way, they feel so big because you're in a new universe that's so well thought out. And you feel like you're experiencing it. They just feel big. And so to stumble at the end of the finish line it's bad decorum. That's bad.
Yeah.
And my biggest frustration with the last set of 3, which I once again haven't seen the last one, is that it felt like everything that was going on that year. And I hate saying this, but it is. It felt like a reboot, right? It felt like Luke's story being retold, but now with a female lead, which at that time we had the females Ghostbusters, we had females Ocean's 11, we had females this and that. And my attitude on that stuff is like, I love women. I love what they're doing. I love that they want strong feminine characters. But you don't replace the male to male. Don't replace the male characters with female characters like they did in comic books for a long time. Like you saw the female Wolverine, you saw the female whatever. I'm like, why would you do that when there is already so many great female characters?
Yes.
What about the Storms? What about the Jean Greys? What about the Psylocks? I mean, that's Psylocke over here. Right. So my whole point is, you don't have to be on the curtails of men in the sense of like, oh, I'm gonna ride the Wolverine train. Like, no, there's already beautiful, strong women that can carry a movie. So don't make everything about like, now we're gonna. I feel like you're dumbing down the women's position when you're saying you now have to be a Wolverine to be popular.
Exactly. No, yeah, 100% agree. Because I see that too, and I've watched interviews with like Anthony Mackie, who plays, he plays Falcon, who's now Captain America, right?
Right.
And I just watched this clip of him talking about how he actually feels the Black Panther movie is racist because it was like, hey, we're gonna have a black it's Black Panther, we're gonna have a black thing and all these other things. And he's like, I've been in that. He's like, I've never had that. And he's like, I just want the best people, like sort of thing. And I totally agree because, I saw this too. And I saw this guy posting on TikTok about it who was black. And he was talking about the same thing. He's like, I don't want like Black Superman. I just want like my own characters, like he was even sort of criticizing, like, I don't know. He was saying, he's like Miles Morales isn't just Black Spider-Man. Miles Morales is Miles Morales. Yeah, he's part of the Spider-Man family. It's like for me, when I think, there are characters where you have like, maybe there's like a group of them that represent like one person. So like for me, the first Green Lantern I think of is Jonathan Stewart, because that was the Green Lantern who was on like when I was watching, when I was growing up. But it's still just like he is one of the Green Lanterns. Right. Yeah, I mean, let people, like, I'd much rather you create a brand new cool character that's not like just hinging on the fact like, oh, it's a Black Superman, so it's cool because he's Superman and he's black. It's like give them their own character. Like super, that's super cool, like that way that they can be like their own unique identity, not just, hey, we're like doing this for the sake of it.
It's a byproduct of Hollywood and where Hollywood is, but now it's trickling down through the media into everybody else, which adds to, I think, the whole society pressure of this and then and his and her and whatever. But my point is, like, that's what those movies felt like for me. Like it was a reboot, which already is a problem because there were so many reboots going on then. And then you had like a female Luke.
Right.
And then it felt like you were just going through the same steps. It felt odd. And it felt like it's like that whole meme of like, what is it? There's that whole saying, it's like, oh, can you cheat on my test? Yeah, but just change it a little bit. So whatever that one is. That's what it felt like exactly. And so my thing was like, dude, you guys are Disney. You guys own this thing now. You guys have so much money. Why would you not have a foresight to what the 3 movies are going to be like? Wouldn't you have a team of excellent writers that can write this to be a fantastic send-off? Because that's the end, right? They're not going to make any more trilogies.
I mean, I'm sure they will at some point, but it's so obvious, especially the 3rd movie, that they are just like, well, I don't know, we got to piece stuff together. I mean, literally when Palpatine comes back, the line is somehow Palpatine returned. I mean, that's it. Like literally that is the line. It is somehow. Like you're not even going to explain it. Like I mean, like it's rushed. I hate using that term, but it's like, nah, man, it was rushed.
Yeah, and with a property like that, it just boggles my mind. I mean, you see,
plus there's leaked scripts. There's leaked scripts of what J.J. Abrams wanted to do, which was still like take it like in a but they were like, no, can't do that.
Why?
Don't know. Just
it feels like there's a lot of.
It's a knee jerk. I mean, it's very apparent that if you watch those movies back to back, it's so apparent that so much stuff that happens in that movie is a knee jerk. It's also short, which is like crazy. Like it's like that easily should have been a 3-hour movie, because there is like the first 10 minutes of that movie is the fastest 10 minutes of any movie you'll ever watch.
Oh, wow.
It's great. Like, it's like, I mean, it is cutting like scene like this. It's like, it's jarring.
Yeah, I feel like based on the little things I've heard, it seems like there was just a lot of political upheaval within the company. And
just watch the first 10 minutes. You don't even have to watch the whole movie. Just click on the first 10 minutes and you'll be like, wow.
And once again, 40-year-old property. I mean, it's more than that at this point, right? It's like a 50-year-old property. I mean, to do that to that old of a property is asinine to me, especially because it's Disney that took it over. It's not like it was,
Lionsgate,
small, whoever. It wasn't a small little company. It's not like you and I took it over and we're like, let's just make it work. Right. That's what they did, though. They just said, let's just make it work. And it's funny because the following property, or the following like movies or properties, shows have far better writing. So maybe they just learned their lessons and now they have better writers. But
I don't know. And for me, the analogy is, the thing I just find the most baffling is like, it'd be one thing if it's just like say say the Resident Evil franchise, right? They've been trying to make Resident Evil movies for the last like 20 years, and none of them have been good. So it's like, okay, maybe Resident Evil just doesn't work as a TV show, or maybe just, but they keep trying and trying, whatever. Disney knows, like you said, Disney knows how to make movies. And the crazy thing is that over on the Star Wars side, you can't make 3 movies. You can't come up with 3 movies together for a plan.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, the guys next door at Marvel
have
put together 25, and they were handicapped.
Yeah.
Like, that's the other thing. Marvel wasn't able to use Spider-Man or the X-Men. They were able to get Spider-Man towards like the very end, because like the rights, Sony owned some of the Sony owned Spider-Man, and then Fox, which they now own, at least the movie division of Fox and stuff like that. But they weren't able to use the X-Men. So they weren't even given like the full cast of toys to play with, right? They still pulled it off.
Yeah, and it's even the Marvel movies, like, they are slightly frustrating because they do make quite a bit of changes. Yeah. Like, I remember the original Infinity War from the comics. Like, I have that comic series, and that in itself, it was a little dated, yes, a little bit, but the motivation for Thanos was there. It was far more believable that it was a love story, or a guy who's after a girl, that motivated this over this feeling of burden, of like releasing the burden of the universe. It's just whatever. But ultimately, I mean, it's just the Marvel, the Star Wars situation is just subpar movies. They just weren't good. Oh, so that way we're not shitting on them for the next X amount of time. Favorite character
in Star Wars?
Yeah.
Ever?
Is that hard? Is that hard, or do you want to go by trilogy?
I think so. For a long time, it was Qui-Gon Jinn was my favorite character, but I'm pretty sure that Din Djarin has passed him.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah. Like, Mandalorian's really good, man. Like,
wow.
Like, and then Grogu, little Baby Yoda, man. Baby Yoda's hilarious. Every second he's on screen is just pure gold.
It's fascinating because I thought it was mostly CGI, Grogu, but it's like an actual animatronic, like thing.
I think he's now it's certainly in season 1, because he didn't really move around a lot. Now he's like using the Force, and he's like moving around a lot more and stuff. So it's definitely a blend. But yeah, no, Din Djarin's sweet. And then they brought Boba Fett back, and Boba Fett's like as badass as possible now. Like, it's sweet.
So are these the Mandalorian? Are they post? Where are they fit in the timeline of the movies?
So it takes place. So Return of the Jedi is 4 ABY. So basically it's like you have everything that happens, including the Clone Wars and the Empire, leads up to like 0, or 1. And so episode 4 is what's considered like so that's considered like ABY, which is the Battle of Yavin, where the first Death Star is destroyed.
Okay.
So everything past that is like considered, 1, 2, 3 ABY. The sequels take place in, I think, like 30 ABY. This is about 9 ABY. So it's about 5 years after Return of the Jedi. Okay. So you're dealing with like the remnants of the Empire are still out there. So Boba Fett has made it out. He made it out. Okay, they brought him in. Of the Sarlacc pit, yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. I was curious of how they did that, whether it was before or after.
Yeah. No, nope. Yeah, it's after.
Why Qui-Gon and why how do you pronounce his name again?
Who? Din Djarin.
Din Djarin, yeah.
Yeah, so Qui-Gon is just always my favorite. I mean, and obviously before I'd ever seen it, then it was Luke Skywalker. But then once those came out, Qui-Gon Jinn, I don't know. I think just because it was Liam Neeson, he's got the long hair. It was like super cool. This like, we hadn't seen a Jedi like that before. Then he dies, but he's like the one who like finds Anakin, and it's like he's the chosen one. And so it's just like really cool. And then they see his like story picks up a little bit, and also like he kind of he's not necessarily like, he doesn't do things the way the council wants him to. So he's still like a little bit of like an outlaw, where it's like, I kind of believe in like more. I trust the Force more than I trust the council. And I was like, okay, I'm down with that. Because then we see that the council's full of idiots, right? You know, Mace Windu and Yoda just let the whole thing run rampant, you know, just fall apart. So, but now Din Djarin and Mando, it's so cool. The Mandalorian is it's so good that it's just like, he's just such a great character. It's like, you know, old Western, right? Yeah. And he's a Mandalorian and he lives by this like creed, and he's like got to go his own way, and he's like gonna unite, you know, all these like Mandalorians and bring them together. And now he has the Darksaber, which is like the whole deal, you know, it's like the ancient Mandalorian lightsaber, and whoever wields it gets to control all of Mandalore. Darth Maul had it during the Clone Wars. Like, it's a big deal.
So I guess that's a good transition to the next question. If you could pick a lightsaber, right, which one, color or style or whatever, what are you choosing?
So actually, this is like the oddest choice, but I actually like Count Dooku's lightsaber.
Oh, the curve.
Because it's a curve, only because in college we had to take like a PE course, and I took fencing just because they happened to offer it. And so like, that's kind of Count Dooku's style. And I'm like, all right, I could do that a little bit. And so I'm just like, now when I like, because I have one over there, but I definitely have like a handful of, and I review them because companies send them to me to review.
Cool.
So, but the curved one, so I just like the feel of it. Color wise, I'd probably go purple, because I think purple is pretty sweet.
Everybody likes the idea of having one of the purple ones, because nobody has it except one guy.
All right.
How funny. Just as me nerding out here, is fencing swords, do they have that curve on the handle as well?
They can. It just sort of depends. Like, typically you're holding it like this, and it's sort of like forward thrust and stuff like that, and you'll still do this. Not all do, but his style is definitely a little more of like the fencing, like swashbuckling, I guess, kind of style.
I heard somewhere that they chose that for him because of his age, right? Like, he wasn't going to be jumping around doing crazy stuff.
Yeah, Christopher Lee, yeah, because he was like 80. I mean, he was really old. I mean, he did that in Lord of the Rings, and he was like, it was pretty much the last things he did.
I think he's good financially for sure after those, hopefully.
Yeah.
Interesting. I was curious on which color and which saber style you'd go with. I was thinking you're going to go with the Darksaber.
I mean, the Darksaber is definitely cool. It's like got that, like, you know, it's like a katana too. Yeah. Where it's not even just like the point at the top. It's got like the sharp edge.
Is that, I mean, I haven't delved too deep into the Darksaber, but is it similar like all the other ones where it has a kyber crystal and it's got its own little... Okay.
Yeah, so the Darksaber, like, specifically, it was created by we'll get real nerdy here for a second. It was created by like this a Mandalorian basically created it. Okay. And he was like a Mandalorian Jedi. But the thing about the Darksaber is it's like very unique, very specific. It never even existed until the Clone Wars cartoon, and then they sort of brought it in. And then they added some stuff to it where it's like whoever wields it basically is like, I'm in control of Mandalore, like, you know, the planet of the Mandalorians. Yeah. But it's got like a Beskar hilt, and Beskar is like what all the Mandalorians wear for armor, and it's like, you know, one of the top, like, most best materials you can have in durability and everything. But the Darksaber also has like this special kyber crystal, so that like it like is in tune with the user even more. So, like, in theory, the stronger the person is who's wielding it, the stronger the blade is. So, like, everybody thinks eventually Grogu's going to get his hands on it. And he's obviously going to be, like, really strong in the Force. So, Grogu could be, like, the most powerful Star Wars character ever, because he's, like, a little Yoda, you know?
Oh, fascinating. Yeah, I like the look of the Darksaber. It's kind of, it's different.
Right.
They just need
black. It's like black and got like crackles in it too. Yeah.
While we're on the discussion on our topic of sabers, what are your thoughts on the whole bleeding the crystal thing that they introduced?
Yeah, I think it's kind of cool. The other way they used to do it was honestly like in Legends, or Expanded Universe or Legends was kind of,
that's
like,
the word I was looking for.
Yeah, so there's both. Yeah, Extended Universe is what it was called until Disney bought it, and then they changed the name to Legends, which is any of the expanded stuff that they said isn't, you know, canon. But I think it's actually kind of a cooler way to do it because it makes the Sith feel like a little more evil, whereas it used to just be like they just like mined them and they just weren't as
So explain to people, for those that aren't nerds like you and I, what does the bleeding thing mean?
Yeah, so basically basically how Darth Vader gets his first lightsaber is he goes and kills a Jedi, and then you basically use the dark side energy to like take this crystal and you remove the force energy from it, and then essentially it'll turn it red. You like bleed it, and then that's what gives like the more dark side. You imbue it with the power of the dark side.
Versus originally, it was like you were playing Minecraft. You would just go and find the right stone, and then it's like, oh, yellow stone means yellow blade.
Yeah, you could totally just go like find one, or I mean, there was still other like dark side ways to do it too, but it wasn't, the lore wasn't as good as it is now, at least with the red lightsabers.
And if I remember correctly, the red were synthetic crystals.
Yeah.
Before the whole bleeding thing.
Right.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I mean, some of the stuff I'm torn on, some of the stuff I'm like, it kind of makes sense. I mean, that I'm okay with. You know, I don't know. I like the idea of just like, I found a cool one. I found the yellow one, right? I found Which begs the question. I'm like, so are the red the only ones that get bled? Like, if you're a purple,
you can so Ahsoka Tano, who's in cartoons, and she's going to have her own Disney Plus show. She's in a couple episodes of The Mandalorian / Book of Boba Fett, because Book of Boba Fett's basically Mandalorian season 2.5. She has white lightsabers, and so white lightsabers, you sort of like do the opposite of bleed. You kind of purify them, I guess. But she's like in the middle. She's like a gray Jedi, which is like, she's not really full dark side. She's not really full Jedi. She like walks her own path. So she has white lightsabers.
So what is the consensus of the gray Jedi now? Because before it was kind of like Qui-Gon was like a gray, right? Where he was not really
he was kind of considered a gray. Yeah.
Right. But so when you look at the Jedi viewpoint, it's very like religious oriented, right? So the council and the regular Jedi themselves like that, these like Pope like figures, right? But then you get to the people that are like, I believe in some of the stuff, not some of the other stuff. That's what the old version of gray was. You were pretty much good, but you did a little couple things on the side every once in a while. But now it seems like it's a whole new thing where you're almost like touching the dark side.
Yeah, yes and no. It's like, honestly, they kind of have messed around with like the gray Jedi because there just aren't that many of them, where it's almost like now it's like the gray Jedi, you just walk your own path. And that could be like you still help the good guys, you know, or you help the bad guys. They're just really, it's just like Ahsoka's like the only like gray Jedi we have right now. Whereas, you know, in the past you had a lot more. Technically, right now, you know, they kind of changed it to where just a purple lightsaber wielder is almost like knowledgeable of the dark side of the Force. So like Mace, so like Mace Windu, because he uses the Vapod style like lightsaber stance, which is, you know, he uses this like, he like knows the dark side and he can like use it against his opponents, and which is why it's purple. And it's like, you know,
the sword style thing has always been difficult for me to wrap my mind around, because it's not like super apparent. Like, I'm not going to watch somebody do something and I'm like, hold on, is that Vapad? Right? Like, I don't get it. But yeah, it's fascinating now that you mentioned that, because I always never really made that connection that like the council were supposed to be like the greatest level of the Jedi, right? But then they have Mace over here. He's like doing these side hustle kind of dark powers where he could do that thing, which I guess is the reason why he was able to go up against Palpatine, right? Like, was the idea that he used that energy against them, that dark energy or whatever. That's kind of hypocritical of Mace Windu for not letting Anakin become a master, but you're over here diddly daddling.
Yeah, and it's I know, it's even like there's all these different lightsaber files. There's like Form 1 through 7, and then there's Vapod, and then, you know, like they're all like, they get like real like even that, like if I ever want to make a video on that or something, I have to like look up a guidebook or something, like which is like, I know Obi-Wan uses Form 4, and like outside of that it's like, okay, I have to like go look up.
I'm sure
that's like real hardcore. Like, I'm like, I have to look at that.
Yeah, some people love it. That brings up, have you seen that? I'm sure you've seen it, because I've seen it and I'm not that into this world and you are. you've seen that video of like I think it's the actor or one of the voice actors when Obi-Wan sees Maul back in when they're on Tatooine. No, where are they? Where Luke is. And basically they're going to fight again. And that's when he kills him at the end, right? But the actor's breaking down, originally he takes one stance, then he goes to another stance, and then he goes to another stance. And it's great the way he breaks that down. And me, as like a very superficial viewer, like I never would have gotten that. But if that was the intent behind it, like that's amazing.
Yeah. So he takes like the same stance that Qui-Gon took in episode 1, and then Qui-Gon gets beat by Maul. So he sort of lures Darth Maul and that's why he basically just one swings him. I mean, it's just like boom, and just kills Maul in like 2 seconds.
Because he's like, oh, I know, I've recognized this, and he's just baiting him. Yeah, it's very fascinating, and that's
there's a lot of that though. Like if you honestly go look and you look at side by side shots, especially because like episode 7, 8, 9 do their own thing, but 1 through 3 and 4 through 6, like there's a lot of times where like they obviously when they're making the prequels, Luke has like a lightsaber stance like this, and then Anakin will do the same lightsaber stance.
Oh, okay.
There's a ton of like mirrored things between them.
So, but see, like that scene with Maul and Obi, to me, there's a lot of.
We're talking about in Star Wars Rebels. The cartoon.
Thank you. Yes. To me, there's a lot of like planning and thought that went into that one scene because it was such an important scene, right? But it's like, where was that team when we built the last 3 movies?
They're working on The Mandalorian. Because that's Dave Filoni. That's like Dave Filoni is like second to George Lucas in terms of,
he seems like he's got passion for the product.
Yeah.
Versus some of the others are just maybe cashing in.
Right.
It's just frustrating.
Yeah.
So I still want to get your thoughts on this. So we'll just get into this. What are your thoughts on the whole Darth Jar Jar theory? And first tell the people what that means.
Okay, so the theory goes that Jar Jar Binks, the character that shows up in episode at Star Wars episode 1, The Phantom Menace, everybody hated him. So basically they sort of like changed a lot of plans for what they had for him. And so that's why he's not as prevalent in the next 2 movies.
Right.
However, there's a lot of interviews with George Lucas where he talks about like he says Jar Jar's the key to everything. And I mean, he flat out says those words, Jar Jar is the key to everything. And you look at Jar Jar Binks, and there's a lot of moments where like he's sort of this like bumbling idiot, but there's a lot of moments where Jar Jar does things that are like, pretty interesting. Like if you really pay attention, like there's a lot of times it's like, oh, he's like stumbling and stuff like that. But then there's moments where like characters don't necessarily have their eyes on him, and he's in the background and he's like successfully doing backflips and like all this other stuff. Like it's crazy. It's totally crazy. So the theory goes that the original plan was to make Jar Jar Binks perhaps even like Darth Plagueis, which would have been, we know, is Palpatine, the Emperor's master. Yeah, especially because George Lucas has talked a lot about Yoda. When we first meet Yoda, Luke is searching for Master Yoda. He goes to this swamp in episode 5, and he meets this like old little hermit alien creature who's like senile and trying to steal his food. Oh, you find out that he's actually a very powerful Jedi warrior, and he's Yoda. So like that's kind of like you take those things and those thoughts that George Lucas has already said, combine them, and that's where a lot of people think that maybe the original plan for the prequels was to make Jar Jar actually like a Sith Lord.
Dude, I love it. What do you? I mean, what are your thoughts on it?
I think it's true. I think that was the plan.
It's crazy that the fandom was so upset that they still made that change. Like Lucas seems to me like the type of guy who just said, we're gonna make it work. They'll like it at the end. Right. I don't know if you're an anime fan, but they do that in anime so often where there's so many twists, and that would have paid off so well. And then people would have kind of gone back, did the research like they did just for these initial little clips, and it would have been far better. Plus, they should have brought Plagueis in at some point.
Yeah,
it would have been great to do.
I think he's gonna be brought into there's another show they're working on right now, Star Wars: The Acolyte, which is like a Sith-based Disney Plus show, and it takes place 100 years before episode 1. So Darth Plagueis would be like alive during that time.
I just feel like it would have been great. The Darth Jar Jar
It would
thing,
have been, yeah.
It would have been great. I when I heard the theory and I saw the clips of him doing the goofy things he was doing, and later on you're like, hold on, did he just wave off that person? Like,
well, the cool thing is that actually, the actor Ahmad Best, who plays Jar Jar, was like
just found
criticized
out
for
about
years.
this. Yes, tell him the story.
He was criticized for years, and now he finally. So the crazy thing is, he just showed up in the most recent episode of The Mandalorian. And he plays this Jedi that he also played on this like random like Star Wars Disney like kids like TV show. It's like it's almost like Legends of the Hidden Temple for like Star Wars kids.
Okay.
And his name is Kelleran Beck, and so anyway, he got to play this character, and he has this like awesome scene where he's just out there wrecking like clone troopers. So it was kind of cool for him to like get this Star Wars redemption a little bit, and they've been doing that a lot lately. They did that in Andor too with Andy Serkis. Like Andy Serkis plays Snoke. Obviously Andy Serkis is like most known for playing Gollum, right? I think in Lord of the Rings, but he also played Snoke, and a lot of people were like, didn't really like it, or thought he should have been treated better. And then he's in Andor, and he's like, I mean, like phenomenal in Andor. I mean, I'm surprised. I'm honest to God surprised, and I'm just saying this as a big Star Wars fan. I'm a big fan of a lot of fandoms. I am like shocked that he was not nominated for like best supporting actor or like best like that episode is like the episode. He's in a few episodes, but like his sort of final episode is so good. I'm like shocked he wasn't nominated for like awards for it.
Yeah, I saw the clips where basically they interviewed what's the name of the actor who played Jar Jar?
Ahmad Best.
So Ahmad Best, when he originally did an interview talking about Jar Jar, like he was talking about the vitriol and the feedback he received in the community, and he looked like visibly sad about it. Like they were after him, right? It's just an actor, right? So whatever. But then people were so happy for him when he came back as this Jedi character. And they were so happy, and he seemed far happier about that too, that he came back and redeemed himself, even though he didn't have to.
Yeah, the next one, the next person they need to redeem, although I don't think he ever wants anything to do with it again, is Jake Lloyd. Jake Lloyd's the kid who plays Anakin in episode 1.
Oh.
I mean, they like ruined that kid's life.
Why? I don't understand why they were so angry at him.
I don't know. The fandom was just so negative. And Mark Hamill spoke out about it, and Mark Hamill has like flat out said like they ruined Jake's life. I mean, like, wow. Yeah, because he was a little kid. I mean, he was like 10, like 12 years old. And the fandom just hated him so much. The funny thing about that is like the hate that the prequels got. When they first came out, the prequels got a ton of hate. But now prequels are considered the best because I tell you, when I post on YouTube or TikTok, like I have a slight age difference. Anytime I post anything on TikTok about like what's the best Star Wars movie, it is always Revenge of the Sith, not Empire Strikes Back.
Wow.
Because it's now that generation has grown up. The people that watched it, like, because I watched it when I was like, 9 or 10. But those are the kids that like watched it when, like how I grew up watching 4, 5, and 6, like on VHS, whatever. And they had like the Clone Wars cartoon, which was like huge too. So now they all think about the Clone Wars as Star Wars. And so they think about Anakin Skywalker and Obi-Wan and like the Clone Wars versions. And so they look at Revenge of the Sith. And so, yeah, if you go like Revenge of the Sith has like quietly moved up to like second best, or in a lot of cases now, like the best Star Wars movie, which is crazy because we've always heard it's Empire Strikes Back.
It's like, as we're talking about that, I'm thinking through the trilogies, right? And it's kind of fascinating because it's like we flip-flopped. The first movie had arguably the worst effects, right?
Right.
Best storytelling. The more famous of the three, or the most popular, as you just mentioned, are the center three, right? Yeah. I'm talking about not how they came out, more so when they came out, not time wise. So those are like the people. Even my friend Ruben, he prefers the newer style stuff, right? I'm like, I prefer the originals just because of storytelling. I'm a big JRPG fan. I'm a big fan of RPG, so I love, like, storytelling is everything for me. So the originals to me are always the best. He likes the second set, which is fair. And then you get to the third set, and it's like the worst storytelling, but visually beautiful.
Yeah, like there's a lot of really good visuals in it.
That scene where the ship goes into hyperspace and it cuts through the other one. Like, I remember sitting there being like, wow, like that's just a beautiful shot.
Yeah, the shot too of Kylo Ren and Rey fighting against those guards, those like red guards.
Yeah.
Like that scene is awesome. Like just visually, it's awesome.
Dude.
And that has one of the best parts in it. It's like one of the best parts and honest to God, the best part of perhaps the whole trilogy is the moment where Kylo Ren is reaching out to Rey and he's saying, "Join me, please."
Okay. Yeah.
And she doesn't do it. And then they just like, so now it's like you've almost left the movie with this like great like, you know, moment, and then they never even like really did anything with it.
Terrible writing.
It's so bad.
Writing.
It's so bad.
So I guess that's another question I was going to ask you. Favorite villain?
Favorite villain?
How about this? Favorite villain and then best written villain.
So the best written villain is hands down, I guess, you know, let me rephrase that. The best written villain is Palpatine.
Okay.
Because Vader isn't a villain. Vader is a fallen hero.
Like an anti-hero kind of, or
an anti-hero. And it's all about his redemption arc. So I don't consider Vader a villain. Favorite villain though might be Darth Maul. Because I think Darth Maul is done very well. I mean, obviously in the Clone Wars cartoons and then into Star Wars Rebels, I think his arc's like really good.
I mean, they spent a lot of time on him. Like they came back, which is fascinating. Right. Yeah. I wonder who chose to bring him back. Like he must have been a fan favorite.
Yeah. Yeah, George Lucas did, because there's like a funny interview with Dave Filoni where George Lucas is like, yeah, I think we're gonna bring Maul back. Now Dave Filoni's like, all right, I guess we got to figure it out. You know, I guess we'll figure it out.
Wow. Yeah, I'm trying to think of. I would almost agree with you on the Vader comment. I would still think that he's probably like the best.
Right. If you totally view him as a villain, then he's the best. It's like
yeah. I think Palpatine is probably more well written, especially when you add the second set of trilogies, because then you get his backstory in a way, like with the set and everything, how he set it all up. But Darth Vader always gave you that feeling when he came on the scene. You were like, oh, this is not going to go well for our character.
Yeah. Yeah. And they've done a lot of cool stuff with Vader lately to make him even more like evil. Like in Rogue One, when he's in that hallway and he's just like destroying everybody.
Yes. The scene where it's dark and then the lightsaber turns on.
Yeah.
Beautiful scene.
Yeah.
Beautiful. That's so well done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you a fan of like what they're doing with the gaming portion of Star Wars?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Jedi Fallen Order was really good. And I think Jedi Survivor, which is coming out as we're recording this in just a couple weeks, is going to be like huge.
Which is the one that people were angry about the microtransactions?
That was Battlefront 2.
Okay. Where they just
yeah, they were really aggressive. Really aggressive. Yeah, I know. But they did sort of like fix it. Like they did it with both of the new Star Wars Battlefront games. But then they got pushed back on, and they gave a lot of free deals, a lot of free content. And so they did sort of like fix it. And then they tried it again with Battlefront 2, and they got pushed back on even more. And then they gave out like more like free stuff. So to be fair, they did sort of like say, okay, well, we messed up. And then they, you know, kind of fixed it a little bit.
Best game
ever, best Star Wars game is still probably Knights of the Old Republic.
Dude, people are so thirsty for that storyline to come around.
Yeah,
I actually like who's the villain with the sweet white armor.
White armor.
So it's one of the newer games, not newer. It's probably 10 years old at this point.
The Old Republic.
The Old Republic, yes.
The MMO has Vitiate.
Yes.
With the white
armor.
I
like his kind of background. So sometimes I'll take deep dives. Like I'll see new characters. I'm like, who's this? And I'll find a video on YouTube, and they like break the history down of the characters all the way. And he's like on his multiple bodies, right? Like he's like an old Sith that can basically swap bodies.
Yeah.
Which is almost seems like what they should have done with Palpatine, but whatever.
Well, you need to watch the final movie and you'll see. So
I'll add that to my list. I've watched the final freaking movie.
The last Lego movie, the last Lego game was really good. Like really good. Lego Star Wars: The Skywalker Saga. Like they totally redid it. Like they redid like the Lego engine, so it feels a lot more modern. And it's just like, I mean, there's so much content in that game. Like it's crazy.
There's a game. I'm trying to Google the name right now. I played it when I was younger. I doubt maybe you might have played it. It was legitimately like one of the most fun games, and I'm sure it's trash now if you go back and play it, but I'll have to find it. But it was basically you were playing as a Jedi in the Luke age, and you were basically first person. It's basically a first person shooter, and you were basically a Jedi, and you basically, depending on how you did things, you would become a good guy, a bad guy.
Yeah. So that is Star Wars Jedi Outcast.
Is it? Let me look at
or Dark Forces 2 Jedi Knight. So yeah, so that's the Dark Forces series. So it's so it starts with Dark Forces, which is like a Doom like shooter, and you play as this character Kyle Katarn.
Yes.
Then it goes, yeah.
That's
Then
the
it
one.
goes, then it goes to Star Wars Dark Forces 2 Jedi Knight. The labeling for the series gets kind of confusing. Then it goes Star Wars Jedi Knight 2, which is actually Dark Forces 3 with the dark stuff. But they dropped the thing. So then it's Jedi Knight 2, Jedi Outcast, and then it was Jedi Academy.
I'm trying to figure out which one I played because I remember playing it, and I'm sure the graphics are just trash. Like they're very, very polygonal. Like they're basically PlayStation style.
So that's you're probably talking about the second or third one.
You might be right. I mean, I'm looking at some of this stuff, and it's like the first one seems like it's third person.
The very first one's like Doom. I mean, it looks just like Doom. The second one was a couple years later, and it looks a little more like maybe Quake. And then you would have segments with a lightsaber, which switched to third person. The same thing with Jedi Outcast, but it was like GameCube era, so it's a little bit better. And then Jedi Academy is like the one everyone really talk about in that series, where you get to play as like just the new character, and you're just in Luke's like Jedi Academy.
Dude, that game was so sweet. I still remember. I mean, if it actually felt great to be able to just take a saber and just slash the people, or you throw lightning or do whatever. It was such a great game. That's the only one I've really played where I was like, I'll go back to it one day.
Yeah.
I wish they would remake some of these with better graphics, but whatever.
Yeah.
Get on the list of things. Yeah, I don't know. I gotta find it now. I have it somewhere. I will find it. What are your thoughts on the future of Star Wars? Where do you think it's going? What do you think is the goal here?
I think they're doing the right thing by focusing everything around this like Disney Plus Mandoverse, which is I think the way to go, because that seems to be, it accomplishes a few things. One, you can boost Disney Plus's value.
Right.
2, you can tell interwoven stories, and I think it just sort of works better than doing like big budget Star Wars movies until you have a plan. When you come up with a good plan,
right,
then release Star Wars movies, right? Like you shouldn't just release Star Wars movies, which is what on every Star Wars movie they've pitched, which has never come to fruition, has sounded like, because they've literally been like, oh, this movie's in development. This movie's in development. We haven't seen anything on any of them, except for that they've been like canceled. So it's just like, come up with a plan that's going to be a Marvel like Star Wars plan, and then we go, then go from there. But other than that, just keep rocking with the Mandalorian and all the stuff around it, because it's doing great.
I mean, I would imagine that something like the Mandalorian would be far more profitable. It could likely cost less to make.
Yeah, a lot less to make.
I mean, you can the figures, the collectibles. I mean, that's you're introducing so many things. I mean, it just seems like the way to go. Plus, everybody's going to the streaming model, which means that people want to be able to just watch the movies at home too, and that is killing some of the profit.
Yeah, it's the streaming wars. I mean, it is right now. We now live in the age of the streaming wars, where every big streaming platform has their big show, and that's what it is.
Yeah, I agree with you. I try to limit how many I have because it's like I don't even have the time for it. But even gaming systems, right? Like even Nintendo has their own thing. The PlayStation has their own thing. I'm like, come on, get out of here. At this point, you're paying hundreds of dollars on streaming services every month. Like, get out. No.
Yeah, I share them. My mom, it's like my family. We all share. So it's each person gets like one or two, and then we collectively have them all. And so like
we just smart.
Yeah, so it's like I pay for Disney Plus and HBO Max. we have Prime, so we have, just because we use it for like shipping and everything. And then my brother plays for Hulu, and he has like some anime ones like Funimation and Crunchyroll. And then my mom has Paramount Plus and Netflix. And then I have a buddy who is like, yeah, here, if you want my Peacock login. So I'm like, okay, sweet. So now I'm like, I have all of them. I don't even know, it's like at this point which ones I don't have, you know.
Are they? I mean, Netflix has gotten a little bit aggressive with how many people are using it at once.
Yeah,
I
haven't seen that yet.
Are the other ones? No, I've been in a couple situations where like, oh, there's too many people using it. I was like, all right, whatever. I mean, do you run into that with any of the others, like Disney or whatever?
No, I think I think like my mom seems to use Paramount Plus a lot because she's like really into Star Trek. So like I don't really use Paramount Plus that much except during the NFL season because you can watch CBS. And then HBO Max is like my go-to. That's what I watch more than anything.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, it's got Game of Thrones, it's got Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon, and it's got DC, which I'm more of a DC guy than I am a Marvel guy, and it's got South Park, so I watch South Park on there.
Interesting. I mean, that's probably a podcast for another day, but I thought the House of the Dragon stuff was kind of paused for a while. Are they still?
Well, I mean, they had season one. Season one was big.
Okay. Yeah, that's another one where I haven't watched it yet, but I felt like I felt like the pacing was a little odd because every episode it's years apart or months apart.
Yeah.
I wasn't fond of that choice, but I get it. Everybody's got to grow up. I get it.
Right. Yeah.
All right. So, what other thoughts do you have on Star Wars? Are there any other like the Darth Jar Jar theory? Are there any other cool ones that are around that people really love?
I think one of the ones that's really interesting, and it's going to be a good while before we see it. I mean, there's obviously like just a lot of like, you know, big ones over the years, but I think one of the ones that's really the most intriguing right now is like Grogu and what's his backstory, because in like the first episode of The Mandalorian, when we find out that Din Djarin, the Mandalorian, right, it has to go collect this bounty on somebody. The only details he's given is that he's 50 years old. Okay, so if you look at the timeline and you go back 50 years, the only other, and then it ends up being Baby Yoda, Grogu. The only other thing that's even takes place in the Star Wars timeline in that year is that Anakin Skywalker is born. So Anakin and Grogu are born in the same year. And remember, Anakin's like the whole big chosen one, bring balance to the Force, all this stuff. And Grogu, for whatever reason, they decided to specifically make him born in the same year as Anakin. And Grogu is also like crazy powerful in the Force. He's a Yoda-like creature. Maybe balance was you created two things.
Ah, that's a good one. I didn't know about that one.
Yeah,
that's fascinating. So they maybe Qui-Gon got it wrong.
I don't know if he got it wrong, but I definitely think there is some connection to them.
So there is some overlapping from like when where Grogu lands to where kind of Yoda was still in the Senate. So I mean, is there crossover there?
Yeah, Grogu's there. I mean, Grogu is at the temple when like Anakin and everyone's there. We obviously don't see him because he was. We obviously see him because he wasn't created.
Right.
But yeah.
I mean, is there any like, hey, check out the second one of the species that the third, right? Because there's
there is what, yeah. So Ahsoka in one of the episodes she's in The Mandalorian, she says, because you know she doesn't know Grogu, but there's so many people at the temple, and she's running around doing her own thing and stuff like that. But she says, she knows somebody else of his race, which is Master Yoda.
I mean, it just seems like, well, we just talk about this race a little bit more, right? Like they seem incredibly powerful.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's fascinating. I got to watch it. So I think what we'll end up doing, if you're okay with it, eventually we'll come back and we'll do another one. I would like to actually, gives me more prep time. I would love to like watch trilogies at a time and eventually just kind of get in deep with you as far as like some of the writing choices, some of like the visual choices. That would be fun to do. And I think it gives me time to also watch The Mandalorian, which everybody seems like they love.
It's really good. Yeah.
Are there any other big Star Wars properties that are coming out that people are really excited for?
Yeah, the Ahsoka show is going to come out later this year. It's going to be big. The other like live action shows, the only ones that are Andor season 2 is going to be really good. Andor has kind of like, I think people are kind of mixed on it. It is, to me, it definitely has a different vibe. Definitely a different vibe than like Mandalorian and a lot of other stuff. Okay. It's basically, I describe it as if HBO was given a Star Wars property. Because it's it darker, feels very, right? Yeah, it's definitely way darker and feels more adult. It's not like it's not like they're saying the F word or anything, but it's just the tone feels very different. And I think it's really cool. It's a little slow. Like it's like the first 6 episodes are kind of slow, and the back half of the season like really picks up. And it picks up like huge, and it's like it makes it worth it that you watched all of the beginning part of it. But so Andor season 2, you have this other show called Skeleton Crew, which we don't really know a whole lot about yet, but Jude Law is going to be in it.
Okay.
And then the Acolyte, which is this Sith show we don't really know a whole lot about yet.
I heard that they were going to go into the Old Republic. Is that going to be show or movies? What are they doing with that?
Yeah, we don't really know a lot about yet, except that it's coming. They've done this thing called the High Republic, which is like this big, huge push in the books and the comics, and it's like 400 years before like Star Wars. So like Yoda's around in it, but it just hasn't really taken off yet.
Hmm.
I mean, there's a lot of content for it, but it just hasn't really like nothing's really caught on with it yet.
Are they gonna start hitting some of like the Vitiate Revan kind of time frames?
Maybe that's like Old Republic's like 3,000 years before Star Wars.
Right. Yeah. People really want Revan. Like he's got a crazy following.
Yeah, I think eventually they will, but yeah, right now Old Republic seems like it'll be a long time before we see anything of that.
Which is still fascinating to me, right? It goes back to that discussion we had initially in the podcast where we talk about like these things are already written. They're great pieces of art and literature in a way that people already gravitate and love. Like, why wouldn't you just
roll with it?
Yeah, just adapt it so it works. I mean, it's not like I'm telling you like, hey man, I did this great story about this thing I did at work, and I just give you vague thoughts. Like there's storylines already built. There's lines the characters say. There's actions already ready. I mean, the fact that you wouldn't adapt it, especially when there's such a big fandom, like I don't understand why Disney went and said, oh, we have it now from George. Let me just wipe it and just start anew.
Yeah.
I mean, you bought it. It came with it. It's not like you had to buy some DLC for the books. You know, you have it. Why not just adapt it? But I don't know.
I want to do their own thing. It's just weird. I know, but.
Yeah. I think maybe it's hubris, right? Like maybe they thought, we're doing so great with Marvel. We can't mess this up.
I think that's part. I think that could be part of it.
Ugh, so disgusting. So disgusting. On a brighter note, I'll free you up some time. I think usually I keep these about an hour.
Yeah.
But I had a package shipped to you.
Yeah, I got it.
I wanted you to open it on the podcast.
I have it. Don't open it. I have it right here. I haven't looked in it yet, but I did have it just so I could rip it open because it was
perfect.
Taped.
I don't want to set a precedence in doing this, but I figured I appreciate your time. I appreciate you doing this. I know you're busy with your multiple podcasts and such.
That's
I figured,
yeah.
I figured let's do something fun. What I got to do one of these days, especially now that you're cooling or you're warming up out there. I just got to head out there one day. And we'll
absolutely, man. Live. Portland is fun. Let's see what we got here. All right.
Because it's cold for a while now, right?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Boom. Oh, this is your woodworking stuff, man.
Yeah, man. I made you set.
Sick.
Pull one of those out. I was looking at what color to do for you, but then I figured you got that blue room, and I'm like, this will fit well in the blue room.
Dude, that's got the Heroes of the Horn. Oh, dude, that box truck, that's freaking sick. Bend the knee. Look at that, man, right there.
Yeah,
dude, that is dude.
One of your podcasts on them.
Oh man, thank you so much. That is badass. Man. Oh, that is so cool. Thank you.
Yeah, man, no worries. I appreciate you doing this.
Absolutely.
Like I was saying, I don't want to set a precedence of doing that because the next thing you know, I'm gonna
right. Everyone's gonna be like, "Hey, man,
how am I gonna find the time to make these things?"
Dude, that's so cool. That is so cool.
Yeah, man, enjoy them.
Will do. Oh, dude, awesome.
I was like, I'll fit in the blue room. Blue. Let's go with blue.
Oh yeah. It's I think it's the walls are actually green, but
are they?
It's just sort of the way I have the lighting and stuff like that. It ends up looking blue, but I change it. Sometimes I have it all through like my phone. I can like ping it all around and change the colors.
Okay. I thought that was like what we're seeing here. I thought it was actually the color of the room.
Yeah, it's technically it's like it's like a aqua, I guess. It's like, but it's a little more green. But then, yeah, I can if I let's see here, do that. Yeah, you can see it's a little more green.
Okay, a little bit, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, it's a green. It's a bluish green. But yeah, it does look blue on camera.
Yeah.
But no, that's sweet. That's perfect, dude. That's awesome. Thank you.
Cool, man. Yeah, of course. So let's let people know how to get a hold of your stuff, because you have quite a bit, right? You have a few podcasts, you have TikTok, Instagram. I mean, let people know.
Yeah, so pretty much you can find me anywhere on the internet at Supergainsbros. I'm on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, and then I have a link tree which will send you to my podcast, Hyperspace Hangouts, my big Star Wars one, Bend the Knees, my Game of Thrones one, then I have Box Sharks, a video game one. Here's the Horn, which is Wheel of Time, which I don't even know if season 2 of that shows what's going on there, but eventually we'll get it, I suppose. They're filming season 3 right now. They haven't even given a trailer for season 2. Amazon's like not great at marketing.
Oh, but they're not chopping it. They're not chopping it.
Yeah, no, it's not chopped. No. It's not chopped. So yeah. So I do all that stuff, and yeah, you can find me anywhere and come hang out. I do live streams and everything.
So you have a few podcasts. You have a Game of Thrones podcast.
Yes.
Star Wars.
Yep.
You have a gaming.
Video games. Yeah.
And then the one
Wheel of Time.
Yeah, the Wheel of Time.
Wheel of Time. Which
is there another? Series, is there a fifth?
Nope. That's pretty much it. I dabbled in like a Harry Potter one, and they just didn't get very far with it, and stuff like that. Yeah, but nope. Those are sort of the four big ones.
It seems like a lot of like fandom to manage.
Yeah,
like you're probably following a lot of accounts. You're a lot of things.
Thankfully, short content is now like king, because it's far easier for me to crank out like TikToks and then turn it into YouTube Shorts and Instagram Reels. Yeah.
Maybe that's what's going on with Star Wars, man. We got the TikTok generation writing the Star Wars movies, and they just
and their attention span's like 2 seconds. Like, let's do this.
Either way, I do appreciate you doing this, my friend. I think we need to do it again.
Absolutely.
I think what I'd like to do at some point is catch up on some of the others, but I still would like to touch up on some of the other fandoms, right? Especially the Game of Thrones. I was super into Game of Thrones. We had the ending, right? Whatever.
Yeah.
But I was super into it. And once again, visually beautiful show. But the writing is where that show is just king. And so I think, if anything, like one of the topics or things that we should definitely kind of push on the podcast is saying, like, if anybody ever listens to this that's in Hollywood or in decision-making rooms, like, the story has to float on its own.
Yeah.
It has to be the story of any of these things, whether you're purchasing for Lucas or buying it from some other writer. The story is like the base that you're building the house on. It needs to be set.
Right.
Otherwise, you're fumbling it all the way through. And it's kind of like, that's a feeling I had with The Witcher. I don't know if you ever kind of followed.
I loved it. I liked season 1. But it's also like the first book where it's like the short stories. It wasn't like season 2 deviates from the books a little bit, but it starts to get into Blood of Elves, which is the first novel. I actually liked season 2 a lot more. But does it deviate from the source material? Yes. I think it's just like, I'm excited to see what season 3 is going to be. Obviously, we know Henry Cavill is going to be out at some point. There's all that. But I think also it's just like same sort of thing with like House of the Dragon, where it's like you have to get through season 1 where you need to do some time jumps to get us set up for like the whole deal. Because then it's like a straightforward story. Like sort of the same thing with like The Witcher. Like season 1 was closer to the books, but it's like, if they just started with like Blood of Elves, but that's not a great place to start, then okay, it would have felt not as like weird to people.
I agree with you. I think they do need to do those things, but and I don't mind the short story style first season, right? The problem for me is like some of the artistic choices that are always changed, right? Like this whole Hollywood needing to be incredibly inclusive. Like these characters, for me, don't match what they look like either in the books or even in the games, which are already a visual representation of the product. But then you get some of the choices like the decisions Yennefer does are far different than what she would have done in the books, because she comes off as the matriarch. She's like the motherly figure.
Right.
And what she's doing in the show is not very motherly.
No.
Some of and that's the theme of the book, right? Like these characters step into roles that are not their own. And so to ruin some of those themes for me was a big issue. And also the reveal of season 2 with Yennefer's backstory is something you don't get till the end of the whole book series. And it's like, okay, well, let's just throw this out there like that. Like, wow.
Yeah.
And I wasn't the biggest fan of 2. And, you know, as much as Cavill likes to say he's like a fan of the source material, like his comments on his whole, like, oh, I don't want to have sex on scene. Like,
do you read the books? Because that's like Geralt in every chapter.
Yeah, Geralt's a whore.
Yeah,
yeah. It's like, what character did you choose? Like, if you don't want to do sex scenes, then go do what's he doing next? What's that property?
Warhammer 40K.
Yes, go do that. There's probably no sex scenes in that.
They're probably not.
Yeah, but anyways, all right, my man. I'll leave you to a little time to get yourself, because you just got out of work a little bit ago, right? So
yeah.
So I'll leave you to it, but I do appreciate you doing this. I appreciate you.
Absolutely, man. Thank you so much. This was total fun. Thanks for the gift. Totally down to do it anytime.
For sure. We'll definitely do it again. My whole thing is I like the idea of I tend to have like a more serious stance on this podcast because it's a little bit different. But when I get a chance to pick someone's brain, especially when it's something fun like this, right? We're just nerding out. This is a blast. So I appreciate it. We'll do this again soon. And then once you get a little bit more feedback from people, maybe we'll decide to either come back to Star Wars or we'll go into some of the other universes.
Absolutely.
All right, buddy. Well, thank you for doing this.
Awesome. Thank you.